The girl who stopped dreaming. She had stopped dreaming a long time ago. Not because she didn't want love, but because life had quietly convinced her she would never have it. Mara Linwood stood at the edge of the crowded ballroom, invisible despite being only a few feet from the glittering center of attention. Chandeliers spilled gold across the marble floor, violin music floated through the air, and wealthy guests laughed as if happiness were a currency they had never run out of. Mara adjusted the strap of her plain black dress, the uniform required for temporary event staff. She kept her posture straight, shoulders back, expression neutral. It was a habit learned from years of being overlooked. When people don't see you, you learn to disappear properly. Table 12 needs more champagne, snapped a supervisor without even looking at her. Mara nodded. Of course. No one asked her name. They never did. Tonight's gala was one of the biggest charity events in the city, hosted by the powerful Halston Foundation. Politicians, celebrities, business magnates, all gathered under one roof to celebrate generosity while waiters slipped silently between them like shadows. Mara preferred being a shadow. Dreams were dangerous things. She had buried hers carefully, like fragile glass wrapped in cloth and hidden in a box no one would open. Once she had dreamed of becoming a dancer, of wearing silk instead of polyester uniforms, of someone looking at her the way people in movies looked at each other, like they mattered more than the rest of the world combined. But dreams don't survive eviction notices, hospital bills, and years of working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. So she stopped dreaming. She worked. She endured. She survived. As she crossed the ballroom carrying a tray of champagne flutes, a group of elegantly dressed women stepped directly into her path. "Watch where you're going," one snapped even though Mara had stopped first. "I'm sorry," Mara said automatically. Another woman looked her up and down, lips curling. "These agencies really should have dress standards. She looks depressing." The group laughed. Mara kept her eyes lowered. Reaction only prolonged humiliation. Silence shortened it. She moved around them carefully, but one woman deliberately shifted her elbow, knocking a glass from the tray. It shattered on the marble. The sound cut through the music like a gunshot. Heads turned. Mara froze. The supervisor appeared instantly, face tight with irritation. "What happened?" "I'm so sorry," Mara said softly. "It slipped." The woman who caused it gave a delicate shrug. "Accidents happen." The supervisor's eyes hardened. "Clean it up. And be more careful. These floors cost more than your yearly salary." Heat crept into Mara's cheeks, but she knelt and began gathering the shards with bare hands. Glass bit into her palm. She didn't react. Pain was familiar, predictable, manageable. Humiliation was harder. As she wiped the floor, she caught fragments of conversation drifting overhead. "Staff quality is declining. They hire anyone these days. Charity event, yet look at her." Her fingers trembled, but she finished the job. When she stood, she noticed a smear of blood on the white napkin. She folded it inward so no one would see. No one cared if she was hurt, only if she stained the floor. Across the room, a ripple of movement shifted the crowd. People straightened. Conversations hushed. Mara glanced up just as the grand doors opened. He entered without fanfare, yet attention followed him like gravity. Tall, composed, effortlessly commanding. Alexander Hale, founder of Hale Technologies, youngest billionaire on the continent, known for ruthless business decisions and almost mythic privacy. Mara had seen his face on magazine covers at grocery store checkout lines. In person he seemed sharper, more real, like someone carved from intention rather than born from chance. Guests moved toward him immediately, eager to be seen, to be acknowledged. He greeted them politely but briefly, eyes scanning the room as if searching for something, or someone. Mara lowered her gaze again. Men like him didn't see women like her. And even if they did, it would only be to look through them. She moved toward the refreshment table to replace empty glasses, trying to ignore the ache in her hand. That's when she felt it. A sudden shift in the air. A presence. Before she could step away, someone collided with her from behind, hard. The tray tilted. Glasses slid. Time slowed. A strong hand shot out and caught the tray before it crashed. Another hand closed around her arm. Firm. Steady. Warm. Mara gasped, startled, and looked up. Grey eyes met hers. Not scanning past her. Not dismissing her. Seeing her. Alexander Hale stood impossibly close, one hand holding the tray upright, the other wrapped around her forearm just above the wrist, anchoring her before she could fall. For a heartbeat, the entire ballroom disappeared. "You're hurt," he said quietly. Not accusing. Not irritated. Concerned. Mara blinked, stunned. I'm fine. His gaze dropped to her hand, where a thin line of blood had begun to seep through the napkin. You're not. The room had gone oddly silent around them. People were staring. Not at her. At him. At the fact that he was touching her. As if the laws of physics had been violated. Mara tried to pull back instinctively. Sir, it's really... His grip tightened slightly. Not possessive. Protective. Don't move. The words were calm, but they carried absolute authority. A nearby staff member rushed forward. Mr. Hale, is everything all right? He didn't look away from Mara. First aid kit, he said. Now. The staff member hurried off. Mara's heart hammered painfully. You don't have to, I don't want to cause trouble. He finally released the tray to another waiter but did not let go of her arm. You're not causing trouble. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. You're bleeding. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not as a nuisance. Not as background noise. As a person. Heat filled her chest. Unfamiliar, fragile, terrifying. She forced a small smile. It's just a scratch. Alexander studied her face as if searching for something beneath the surface. You didn't even flinch. She hesitated. Because the truth was simple. Pain didn't surprise her anymore. I'm used to it, she said before she could stop herself. Something changed in his expression. Not pity. Something deeper. Something heavier. The staff member returned with a medical kit, breathless. Here, sir. Alexander guided Mara gently toward a nearby chair. Not like an employee, not like an inconvenience, but like someone fragile and important at the same time. Sit. She obeyed automatically. He knelt. In front of her. A billionaire on one knee before a temporary waitress. Gasps rippled through the room. Mara's eyes widened. You don't have to do this. He opened the kit calmly. I know. He took her injured hand carefully as if it were made of glass. Up close, she could see faint lines of exhaustion at the corners of his eyes. Not weakness, the kind of weariness that comes from carrying too much responsibility for too long. He cleaned the cut gently. It's deeper than it looks, he murmured. She watched him, completely disoriented. No one had ever treated her wounds with patience. Usually she just wrapped them herself and kept working. Why? She whispered. He glanced up. For the same reason anyone should. Their eyes locked again. Because you matter. The words hit her harder than any insult ever had. Something cracked inside her chest. Something she had sealed shut years ago. Across the room, whispers exploded. Why is he helping her? Who is she? Is she someone important? Mara felt panic rising. Attention meant danger. Judgment. Consequences. She tried to stand. I should get back to work. Alexander's hand closed around her arm again. The same arm he had taken before. Gentle but unyielding. You're not going anywhere. Her pulse thundered. I'll get in trouble. His gaze turned cool, authoritative, unmistakably powerful. No one here will trouble you. A hush fell over the nearest guest. Because everyone understood what he had just implied. Protection. Public. Absolute. Mara swallowed hard. You don't even know me. His expression softened again, almost curious. Then tell me your name. No one had asked her that tonight. Or yesterday. Or most days. Mara, she said quietly. Mara Linwood. He repeated it slowly as if committing it to memory. Mara. Something warm flickered in his eyes, something dangerously close to recognition. Like he had been looking for her without knowing it. Have we met before? He asked. Her heart stuttered. Because for one impossible second, she felt like maybe they had. But that was ridiculous. Men like him didn't cross paths with women like her. Not that I remember, she said. He studied her face a moment longer, thoughtful, searching. Then unexpectedly, he smiled. Not the polite public smile she had seen in photographs. A real one. Soft. Almost relieved. Well, he said quietly, still holding her arm, I'm very glad we did tonight. For the first time in years. Mara felt something dangerous stir inside her. Not hope. Hope was reckless. Something smaller. More fragile. Like the faint echo of a dream she thought had died forever. And she didn't yet know. That this single moment, this man taking her arm, would unravel secrets powerful enough to shake the entire room. And change both their lives forever. The man who would not let go. Mara had spent years perfecting the art of disappearing. But it is impossible to be invisible when the most powerful man in the room refuses to let go of your arm. Alexander Hale rose slowly from his kneeling position, still holding her hand as if releasing it would allow her to vanish. The bandage he had applied was neat, precise, the kind of careful work done by someone accustomed to responsibility. The ballroom, once buzzing, now felt tense. Conversations had stalled into murmurs. Eyes followed them openly. Mara felt exposed, like a spotlight had been forced onto a stage she never wanted to stand on. "I really should go back," she said quietly, trying again to withdraw her hand. He didn't tighten his grip, he simply didn't release it. "You've done enough for tonight. I'm being paid to work." His jaw set slightly. "Not anymore." Her stomach dropped. "Please don't fire me." The words escaped before she could stop them. For a fraction of a second, shock crossed his face. Not offense, not anger, hurt. "I'm not firing you," he said, softer now. "I'm removing you from a situation where you were injured and ignored." She blinked. "That's not how jobs work." "It is when I'm funding the event." That explained the supervisor's sudden nervous hovering in the background, unsure whether to intervene or disappear. Alexander finally released her hand, only to offer his arm instead. The gesture was unmistakably formal. Protective. Public. "Come with me." Mara stared at him. "Where?" "Somewhere quieter." Panic flickered through her chest. Quiet meant alone. Alone meant vulnerable, especially with someone powerful enough to change her life with a single decision. "I don't think that's appropriate." His expression didn't harden. If anything, it softened further, as if he respected her hesitation. "You're right," he said calmly. "Then we'll stay where everyone can see." He guided her a few steps toward a side seating area, not hidden but removed from the center of attention. Staff rushed to clear space instantly. Mara sat stiffly, unsure what to do with her hands. Alexander remained standing beside her, not looming, guarding. The supervisor approached cautiously. "Mr. Hale, if there's anything we can—" "There is," he said without looking at her. "Ensure Ms. Linwood receives full pay for the evening and transportation home." The supervisor nodded quickly. "Of course." Mara shook her head. "That's not necessary. I can take the bus." Alexander turned to her slowly. "The bus doesn't run this late." She hesitated. He was right. He seemed to notice the silent calculation in her eyes. "Consider it an apology," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "No," he replied quietly. "But I can still make things better." She didn't know how to respond to that. Silence settled between them, not awkward but charged. Across the room, guests continued whispering. "Is she a relative? A secret partner? Did she save his life or something?" Mara felt her face burn. "Everyone's staring." "They'll survive." "That's not what I meant." He studied her carefully, as if finally understanding the weight of attention on someone and used to it. "You don't like being noticed. It usually ends badly." Something in his expression sharpened, not at her but at the idea of anyone hurting her. "Not tonight." Before she could reply, raised voices cut through the air. "Unbelievable." The elegantly dressed woman who had knocked the glass earlier approached, flanked by her friends. Her smile was thin, polite, venomous underneath. "Mr. Hale, I'm sure you don't realize this young woman caused quite a scene earlier. Completely unprofessional." Mara's stomach tightened. Here it was, the punishment for being seen. Alexander didn't even glance at the woman. "Mara," he said calmly, "did you cause a scene?" She swallowed. "No." He nodded once. "Then there wasn't one." The woman's smile faltered. "Well, she dropped a glass," he finished, "after being bumped." The woman stiffened. I saw what happened." His voice remained level, but the temperature of the room seemed to drop. And even if she had dropped it on her own, accidents happen. Humiliation is optional. A stunned silence followed. Mara stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. No one had ever defended her. Not publicly. Not against people with money and influence. The woman's cheeks flushed. "I didn't mean to humiliate anyone." "Then perhaps you'll apologize." It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't loud. It was absolute. The woman hesitated, pride battling reality, then forced a tight smile toward Mara. "My apologies." Mara blinked, unsure how to respond. "Thank you." The woman retreated quickly, dignity in tatters. Whispers exploded louder than before. "That was brutal. He just put her in her place." "Who is that girl?" Mara's hands trembled in her lap. Alexander noticed immediately. "You're shaking." "I'm not used to winning," she admitted softly. Something warm flickered across his face. "Pride, maybe? You should get used to it." Before she could respond, the orchestra began a slow, elegant waltz. Couples drifted onto the dance floor. Mara watched them automatically, a reflex from years of imagining what it might feel like to be part of something beautiful instead of serving it. Alexander followed her gaze. "Do you dance?" She shook her head quickly. "Not like that." "Like what?" "Like someone who belongs there." He turned fully toward her. "You do belong there." She gave a small, sad smile. "That's kind, but it's not true." He extended his hand. "Prove it." Her heart stumbled. "I can't." "You can. People will talk. They already are. That's not helping." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then ignore them." She stared at his hand, strong, steady, patient. No one had ever asked her to dance before. Not at school, not at parties, not anywhere. Because invisible girls don't get chosen. "I'm going to embarrass you," she whispered. His eyes softened. "Mara, nothing about you embarrasses me." Something inside her shifted, a tiny fracture in the wall she had built around herself. Slowly, cautiously, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, grounding, certain. He led her to the dance floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A billionaire, dancing with a temporary waitress. Mara's pulse roared in her ears. "I don't know the steps. Just follow me." His hand settled at her waist, respectful, steady. He began to move, slowly, patiently, guiding rather than controlling. To her shock, her body responded. Muscle memory from childhood dance classes she had abandoned long ago surfaced unexpectedly. One step, two, turn. She didn't stumble, didn't fall, didn't fail. Alexander watched her with quiet focus, not evaluating, not judging, admiring. "You lied," he murmured. She blinked. "About what?" "You do dance." A shy laugh escaped her before she could stop it. "I used to." "Why did you stop?" "Because life happened. Because dreams don't pay rent. Because hope hurts when it dies." But she only said, "It didn't make sense anymore." His grip tightened slightly. "Maybe it does now." For a few miraculous moments, the world narrowed to music and motion. No whispers. No judgment. Just warmth and rhythm and the steady presence of someone who refused to let her fade into the background. Then the song ended. Applause broke out, not thunderous but surprised. Mara stepped back immediately, reality crashing in. "I should go." Alexander didn't stop her this time. But his eyes held hers. "Will you be all right?" She nodded, though her chest felt painfully full. "Yes." He reached into his pocket and produced a simple card. "Call me." Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Because I want to see you again." The simplicity of it stole her breath. No conditions. No expectations. Just desire. "For what?" she asked quietly. His answer was immediate. "For whatever you want it to be." Her throat tightened. Dangerous territory. Hope lived here. She took the card carefully as if it might vanish. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Probably not," he agreed. A faint smile curved his mouth. "But the best things rarely are." A staff member approached nervously. "Miss Linwood, your ride is here." Mara looked back at Alexander one last time. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Important. Wanted. And that was far more terrifying than being ignored. "Good night, Mr. Hale." His gaze softened again. "Good night, Mara." She turned and walked toward the exit, clutching the card in her bandaged hand. She didn't look back. If she did, she might run to him instead of away. Outside, the night air was cool, grounding. The driver opened the car door politely. As she slid inside, she finally allowed herself to look at the card. Just a name. A number. Nothing else. No title. No company. As if he wanted to be contacted not as a billionaire, but as a man. Mara pressed the card to her chest, heart racing wildly. Because something impossible had happened tonight. Someone powerful had chosen her. Not for what she could give. Not for how she looked. Not for status or advantage. Simply her. And deep inside, buried beneath years of survival and disappointment, a fragile, trembling hope began to breathe again. She didn't know yet that Alexander Hale had not chosen her by chance, and that the reason he had taken her arm was connected to a truth powerful enough to change everything she believed about her past. The truth she was never meant to know. Mara didn't sleep that night. She lay on her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, the soft hum of the city leaking through the thin apartment walls. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old books, the quiet scent of a life built on practicality, not comfort. In her hand she still held the card. Alexander Hale. Just the name made her stomach flutter and tighten at the same time. She turned onto her side, pressing the card against her chest. What did he want from her? Men like him didn't pursue women like her without reason. Not kindness, reason. Experience had taught her that. Morning arrived too quickly, gray light creeping through the curtains. Mara dragged herself up, washed her face, tied her hair back, and prepared for another day at the small bookstore where she worked part-time. Routine was safe. Routine meant not thinking. She slipped the card into her coat pocket. Not because she planned to use it, she told herself, just because throwing it away felt impossible. The bookstore bell chimed softly as she unlocked the door. Mrs. Donnelly, the elderly owner, was already inside, arranging new arrivals with slow, careful movements. "You look like you fought a hurricane," the woman said kindly. "Just tired?" Mrs. Donnelly peered at her over her glasses. "You're glowing." Mara blinked. "I'm what?" "Glowing," she repeated. "Like something interesting happened." Mara busied herself with a stack of books. "Nothing interesting happens to me." Mrs. Donnelly only hummed knowingly. Late morning passed quietly. Until a black car pulled up outside. Not just any car, sleek, expensive, unmistakably out of place on a street lined with discount shops and laundromats. Mara's stomach dropped. No, it couldn't be. The car door opened. Alexander Hale stepped out. He wasn't in a tuxedo now. No spotlight. No entourage. Just dark jeans, a charcoal coat, and an air of contained intensity that made the entire street seem to straighten around him. Pedestrians slowed. People stared. He walked directly to the bookstore door and pushed it open. The bell chimed. Mrs. Donnelly froze mid-movement. Mara forgot how to breathe. He looked around the small shop, taking in every detail, the uneven shelves, the handwritten price tags, the faint dust motes floating in sunlight. Then his gaze landed on her. Relief softened his features. "You're here." Mara swallowed. "I work here." "I wasn't sure." "Why?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because you left without calling." Her pulse jumped. "It's been less than 12 hours. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Felt longer." Mrs. Donnelly approached cautiously. "Can I help you find something?" Alexander turned to her with polite warmth. "I'm looking for Mara." The older woman's eyes widened slightly. "You found her." He nodded. "May I speak with you?" he asked Mara. She hesitated. Her safe world was colliding with something unpredictable and powerful. "Is something wrong?" His expression grew serious. "No. Something important." Her heart began to race. She glanced at Mrs. Donnelly, who gave a subtle nod. "Go." Mara stepped outside with him. The cold air hit her face, sharp and grounding. "You didn't have to come all this way," she said. "I did." "Why?" He studied her carefully, as if weighing how much to say. "Because I remembered something." A chill ran down her spine. "What kind of something?" Instead of answering, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It took most of the night to confirm. He handed it to her. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Faded. Creased. Clearly decades old. A little girl stood in front of a park fountain, holding a balloon and laughing at someone outside the frame. Mara's breath caught. It was her. 5 years old. Before everything changed. Before her father died. Before her mother disappeared. Before the foster system. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. Alexander's voice was very quiet. "My mother kept it." Her head snapped up. "Why would your mother have my picture?" His eyes held hers steadily. "Because she was there that day." The world tilted. "I don't understand." He hesitated, not from uncertainty but from care. "My mother used to volunteer at children's programs. She talked about a little girl she met once. A girl who danced in the fountain because she didn't have money for rides." Mara felt the memory slam into her chest. The summer festival. Sticky heat. The smell of popcorn. Her mother laughing as she splashed barefoot in the water. She had been happy that day. Truly happy. "She said that girl had the bravest smile she'd ever seen," Alexander continued softly. "Even though she could tell life wasn't easy." Mara's eyes burned. "She tried to find you afterward," he said. "But your family had already moved. Records were incomplete. You vanished." Her voice shook. "Why would she try to find me?" He looked almost embarrassed. Because I wouldn't stop talking about you. Mara froze. What? He took a slow breath. I was there too. Silence swallowed the street noise. You were? I was 10. Bored. Miserable. Dragged to another charity event. A faint smile touched his lips. Then I saw this tiny girl dancing like the world belonged to her. Mara's heart pounded violently. You shared your cotton candy with me, he said. Even though it was the only one you had. A tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. She remembered. A quiet boy sitting alone on a bench, dressed too nicely for the heat, looking lost. She had marched over and handed him half her treat because no one should look that sad at a festival. You told me, he continued, voice rougher now, that if I smiled, the day would get better. Her knees felt weak. You said dreams only disappear if you stop believing in them. Mara pressed her hand to her mouth. Oh my God. Alexander stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough to steady her if she fell. I never forgot you. Her vision blurred with tears. But, that was years ago. Yes. And you just remembered me last night? His expression softened deeply. No. I recognized you the moment I walked into that ballroom. Her breath caught. But I needed proof. I needed to be sure. Why didn't you say anything? His voice dropped to a near whisper. Because I wasn't sure you'd want to remember. The kindness in that assumption broke something open inside her. I spent years trying to forget that day, she admitted shakily. Because it was the last time everything felt safe. He nodded slowly, understanding without explanation. I spent years trying to find you. Her eyes widened. Why? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady, but full of emotion. Because you saved me that day. She shook her head weakly. I was 5. And I was a very lonely 10-year-old who thought the world was cold and meaningless. He met her gaze with quiet intensity. You were the first person who proved me wrong. Mara's chest ached, overwhelmed. I didn't do anything special. You gave me kindness without expecting anything back. His eyes softened. That's rare. Tears spilled freely now. All these years, she had believed she was insignificant, forgettable, invisible. Yet someone powerful had carried her memory like something precious. I stopped dreaming, she whispered. Because life taught me not to. Alexander's expression grew fierce, not angry but determined. Then life was wrong. He hesitated only a fraction of a second before reaching out. Not grabbing. Not demanding. Just offering. His hand closed gently around her arm again, the same arm he had taken the night before. Steady. Grounding. Intentional. Maybe, he said quietly, it's time you started again. Mara looked down at his hand, then back at his face. For the first time she saw not a billionaire, but the lonely boy from the park. The one she had shared cotton candy with. The one who had never forgotten her. And suddenly the impossible didn't feel so impossible anymore. But neither of them knew that someone else had recognized Mara too. And unlike Alexander, their intentions were not kind. From across the street, a black SUV idled silently. Inside, a man lowered a camera. Target confirmed, he muttered into his phone. After all these years, we finally found her. The danger that followed her. Mara didn't notice the black SUV. She didn't see the camera lens disappear behind tinted glass. She didn't hear the quiet engine as the vehicle pulled away. All she saw was Alexander. And all she felt was the terrifying, fragile return of something she had buried for years. Oh, I don't understand, she said, wiping her cheeks. Why would someone try to find me after all this time? Alexander's hand remained lightly around her arm. Not restraining, not possessive, reassuring. My mother believed people come into our lives for a reason, he said. She thought you were meant to remind us what kindness looks like. A sad smile touched his lips. She was right. Mara's chest tightened. She sounds like a wonderful person. She was. The past tense didn't escape her. I'm sorry. He nodded once, gaze drifting briefly toward the street as if memory lived somewhere in the distance. She died 3 years ago. Something about the way he said it told Mara that the loss was still raw. I kept the photo because it mattered to her, he continued. And because it mattered to me. Her voice trembled. You've been carrying a memory of a little girl for decades. Yes. Why didn't you forget? He looked at her as if the answer were obvious. Because she didn't forget me. Her heart stumbled. That lonely boy on the bench. She had never known his name, never seen him again, but she had thought about him for years. Wondered if he ever found happiness. I used to hope you were okay, she admitted softly. Something deep and vulnerable flickered across his face. I am now. Inside the bookstore, Mrs. Donnelly watched through the window, hands clasped under her chin like a woman witnessing a miracle. Outside, the city moved normally, people hurrying, cars passing, life continuing, completely unaware that two lives were quietly colliding in a way that would change everything. Alexander hesitated, then spoke carefully. Mara, there's something else. Her stomach tightened. That usually means bad news. Not bad. Just complicated. She braced herself. When my team tried to locate you years ago, we found nothing. No school records after a certain point. No stable address. It was like you vanished. She looked down, shame creeping in. My father died when I was 6. My mother couldn't cope. She disappeared a year later. His expression darkened. I'm sorry. I went into the system. Foster homes. Temporary placements. Sometimes shelters. She shrugged weakly. Paperwork gets lost. Kids get forgotten. Alexander's jaw tightened, a flash of anger crossing his face, not at her but at the world that had failed her. You shouldn't have been forgotten. But I was. He shook his head slowly. Not by everyone. The sincerity in his voice made her throat ache. A cold gust of wind swept down the street. Mara shivered. Without hesitation, Alexander removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm, heavy, faintly scented with something clean and masculine. You'll freeze, she protested. I'll survive. She clutched the coat around herself, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sensation of being cared for without conditions. You don't even know me as an adult, she said quietly. He met her gaze. I know enough. That's dangerous. Most worthwhile things are. Across town, the black SUV pulled into an underground garage. A man stepped out, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, he said. It's her. Same face. Same eyes. Pause. No mistake. Another pause. His expression hardened. I understand. We'll proceed carefully. He hung up and glanced at the photo on his screen, Mara standing beside Alexander. A slow, satisfied smile spread across his face. After all these years, he murmured, the missing piece just walked back into the game. Back on the quiet street, Mara returned the photograph to the envelope with trembling hands. What happens now? She asked. Alexander didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, not like a businessman evaluating an asset, but like someone trying to understand a puzzle he had been handed by fate. Now, he said finally, I'd like to get to know you. Her pulse jumped. Why? Because I don't want to lose you again. The words hit harder than she expected. You don't even know if you'll like who I am now. A faint smile touched his mouth. I already do. She looked away, overwhelmed. People don't usually stick around once they see the whole story. His voice grew very quiet. Then those people don't deserve you. Something in her chest cracked open further, painful, hopeful, terrifying. Mrs. Donnelly opened the bookstore door. Mara dear, she called gently, you can take the afternoon off. Mara blinked. I can't just leave. Yes, you can, the older woman said firmly. Consider it an investment in a good story. Alexander chuckled softly. Mara flushed. You don't have to do that. I'm not, Mrs. Donnelly replied with a knowing smile. He is. Alexander inclined his head politely. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Just bring her back in one piece. His expression turned serious. I intend to. Mara found herself standing beside his car minutes later, heart racing as the driver opened the door. This is insane, she murmured. Possibly. I don't do spontaneous. Maybe you should. She hesitated, fear and excitement warring inside her. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, he said. The word safe landed softly but firmly. Something in his tone told her he meant more than physical safety. She slid into the car. Alexander followed. The door closed with a solid, final sound. For the first time in years, Mara allowed herself to lean back and breathe. As the car pulled into traffic, she glanced sideways at him. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? Not the little girl from the park. Not the memory. No. Alexander's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. Because even after everything you've been through, you're still kind. He met her eyes. That tells me more about you than anything else ever could. Tears blurred her vision again, but this time they didn't feel like grief. They felt like something fragile trying to grow. The city skyline rolled past the window. Mara didn't know where they were going. She didn't know what would happen next. but for the first time in a long time. She wasn't bracing for the worst. She was wondering about the best. And she didn't realize that the people watching her had no intention of letting her new life begin peacefully. Because somewhere in the city, powerful individuals were already moving pieces into place, determined to drag her back into a past she didn't even remember. A past where her existence wasn't accidental. A past where her disappearance had been very deliberate. And when the truth surfaced, it wouldn't just change her future. It would expose a secret worth destroying lives to protect. The dream she thought was gone forever. The car stopped in front of a quiet waterfront park. Not a luxury restaurant. Not a private mansion. Just open sky, water reflecting afternoon light, and the distant sound of gulls drifting on the wind. Mara blinked in surprise. This is unexpected. Alexander stepped out first, then offered his hand to help her. I thought you might prefer somewhere that doesn't feel like a performance. She smiled faintly. You're very good at guessing what I need. Not guessing, he said quietly. Paying attention. They walked along the path in silence, the city noise fading behind them. For the first time since the gala, Mara felt something close to calm. No judgment. No whispers. Just space. She sat on a bench overlooking the water, clutching his coat around her shoulders. Alexander remained standing for a moment, watching the waves as if organizing his thoughts, then sat beside her, not too close, not distant either. Respectful. Careful. As though she were something fragile he didn't want to frighten away. Mara, he said finally, there's something I need you to know before things get complicated. Her stomach tightened. Complicated sounds ominous. It is. She turned toward him fully. Tell me. He hesitated, then met her gaze with absolute honesty. People have been looking for you. Her heart skipped. What do you mean, people? I don't know yet. But when my security team ran a routine check after last night, they found recent inquiries about you. Not normal ones. Fear crept cold fingers down her spine. I'm not important enough for anyone to look for. That's what worries me. Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. I've never done anything, she said quietly. I don't owe money. I don't have enemies. I barely have a life. Alexander's jaw tightened. Sometimes it's not about what you've done. It's about who you are. Her chest tightened painfully. That doesn't make sense. Not yet. A memory surfaced, flashes she had ignored for years. Strange moves between foster homes. Adults whispering when they thought she couldn't hear. Documents locked away. She had always assumed it was bureaucracy. What if it wasn't? Her hands began to shake. Alexander immediately covered them with his own. Warm. Steady. You're not alone in this. The words wrapped around her like a shield. She looked up, eyes wide with fear. What if something bad happens? His expression hardened, not at her but at the idea itself. Then it happens to both of us. Her breath caught. You don't even owe me that. He shook his head slowly. I owe you everything. Across the park, two men in plain clothes pretended to read newspapers while watching them carefully. One murmured into a hidden earpiece. Contact confirmed. Hale is involved. Pause. Understood. The newspaper lowered just enough to reveal a satisfied smirk. Back on the bench, Mara wiped her eyes. I spent so many years trying not to want anything, she admitted. It was easier than being disappointed. Alexander listened without interrupting, a rare skill for someone used to being the most important person in every room. I told myself love was for other people, she continued. People with stable lives. Families. Futures. Her voice broke slightly. Not girls who get left behind. Something fierce ignited in his eyes. You were never meant to be left behind. She shook her head weakly. You don't know that. I do. How? Because someone tried very hard to erase you, and failed. The implication hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. She turned toward him slowly. What if I'm not who you think I am? His answer came without hesitation. Then I'll learn who you really are. Her chest tightened painfully. And if you don't like what you find? His voice softened to something almost unbearably gentle. Mara, I already like what I see. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming relief of being accepted without conditions. He reached up hesitantly, brushing one tear away with his thumb. The touch was feather-light, as if he were asking permission. She didn't pull back. Instead she leaned into it. I stopped dreaming, she whispered. Because dreams hurt when they disappear. His hand slid to cradle her cheek, warm and grounding. Then let me be the one that stays. Her heart pounded violently. That's a dangerous promise. I don't make promises lightly. She searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was too good to be real. She found none. Only quiet certainty. Mara, he said softly, do you trust me? The question was simple. The answer was not. Trust had cost her too much before. But something inside her, something older than fear, stronger than caution, recognized him. Not as a billionaire. Not as a savior. As the lonely boy who had needed her once. And maybe still did. She nodded. Yes. The word felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping there was ground beneath the fall. Relief washed over his face so visibly it almost hurt to see. Thank you. He took her hand again, not pulling, not guiding, simply holding. The same arm he had taken in the ballroom. The same steady warmth. This time she didn't feel trapped. She felt anchored. We'll figure this out together, he said. Whatever comes. And if it gets messy? It will. And if people try to hurt us? His gaze turned sharp as steel. They'll regret it. There was no arrogance in the statement. Just certainty. Mara looked out at the water, sunlight dancing across the surface. For years she had believed her life would be small. Quiet. Survived rather than lived. But now, everything felt possible and terrifying at the same time. What if this is all a mistake? She whispered. Alexander shook his head. Meeting you is the least mistaken thing that's ever happened to me. Her breath caught. No grand speeches. No dramatic declarations. Just truth. A faint laugh escaped her, shaky but real. You realize my life was perfectly boring until you showed up. Good, he said. Boring is underrated. It means you survived. She squeezed his hand gently. And now? Now, he said, meeting her eyes, you get to live. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the words sink in. What? Not endure. Not disappear. What? When she opened them again, something had changed, not in the world but inside her. The girl who had stopped dreaming was still there. But she wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to discover. In the distance, thunder rolled faintly across the sky. The storm was coming. Neither of them noticed. They were too focused on the fragile miracle unfolding between them, two lonely lives intersecting at exactly the moment they needed each other most. Mara leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stayed. And sometimes, staying is the bravest kind of love. Somewhere in the city, phones rang, orders were given, plans accelerated. Powerful people had realized Mara was no longer alone. And that made her far more dangerous than before. Because a forgotten girl can be erased quietly. But a girl protected by a man like Alexander Hale could change everything. Mara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Secrets. Conflict. Truths that would shake her world. But for now, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt since childhood. Safe. Chosen. And as Alexander tightened his arm gently around her shoulders, pulling her closer without a word, she realized something astonishing. She hadn't just stopped dreaming. She had stopped believing she deserved happiness. And maybe, just maybe, he had come back into her life to prove she was wrong.